Hello, everyone. So, back in mid February, I was emailing this gentleman back and forth, and I told him I was going to make this video that week. It's been a month. It's been a month. It's kind of embarrassing, actually. I haven't made it. I have been thinking about it, and I've been trying to figure out the proper way to go about making this video. Because if I do it the wrong way, there are going to be so many people who are going to be mad at me. Now, I don't entirely care because people are mad at me no matter what I talk about in a video. Like, I could talk about the most pro man thing ever, the most pro men's rights thing in the world, and I still get like a ton of men complaining about the fact that I made it while also having girl parts. So obviously I can't make certain people happy, but I'm trying to minimize the amount of outrage I cause just by the fact of my existence. Um, so I was trying to figure out a nice, delicate way to approach this, and also I just want to do a good job of it. It's one of those things that's controversial enough that if you're gonna say it, you got to say it right. Or kind of just don't say it at all, because if you say it the wrong way, and I see plenty of people saying it the wrong way, you're not you're not supporting your own cause. You're actually working against it. So I'd rather not be doing that. And also, I think that if I'm going to make a video of any kind of quality on a subject like this, because it's a large and complicated subject, it might not seem like it, but it is, I'm going to have to break it down into bite-sized pieces, because when I try to make a video that covers everything, I end up with a video that just doesn't feel particularly satisfying. It seems a little bit too discombobulated, disjointed, and I don't want to do that either, especially not with a topic like this, especially not after all the thought that I've put into it over the last month or so. So the question is, should women be subservient to men? And the very, very first thing I need to say, and this is something that I think men need to hear, is if you are running around with the impression that all women need to be subservient to all men simply because the men are male with penises and testosterone, you're wrong. That's not going to work. And honestly, I would never want to live in a society where that is the case. I know there are societies where that's the case. It's like, oh, you're male, so you get to rule and you get to lead and you get to make the decisions, and you're female, so you don't get to make the decisions. Screw that, just screw that. I would hate to live in a society like that. I would hate for my children, male or female, to grow up in a society like that. No, I'm sorry, no. And I know I meet men who believe that crap. I do all the time. I mean, there are guys out there who are very, very convinced that women are just dumber and lesser and inferior in just about every way. And it's like, I assume these people are stupid. I just assume they're stupid. They start talking to me like I'm somehow less than them because I have a vagina attached to me, and I just assume they're idiots. Like, I'm sorry, that's just it. I'm never going to not assume that someone is an idiot for assuming that my genitalia somehow ranks me as a human being, especially if they think it ranks me as inferior to them. But even if for some crazy reason they think it ranks me as superior to some people, so feminists, I'm talking to you there, feminists who are all like, oh, woman power, girl power, you're better than a man. Screw that. Screw that. I don't think a person's genitalia should rank them in some sort of hierarchy by default. However, we're not talking about the grand scheme of things. We're not talking in universals. We're not talking about all men having some sort of higher tier over all women who are just low down beneath them. We're talking about things on a much more individualized scale. Should women who are in relationships with men, especially marriages, because marriages, you've kind of made a long-term commitment. Ideally, you will have found someone that you're willing and content to spend the rest of your life with. I know not all marriages work out that way. We're speaking in generalities. We're not talking about like the specific marriages because I mean we all know that one person or that one couple where things completely fell apart. I'm thinking like those cases where he's an abusive a-hole and she has to get out of the marriage because it turns out that he just wasn't the guy she thought he was. Should she be subservient to a guy like that? Well, no one should be subservient to a guy like that, and anybody who's placed in a situation where they feel like they need to be subservient to that, like co-workers, employees, underlings, and the unfortunate wife in question, their life sucks and they don't deserve to have to deal with that kind of crap. But in a more generalized sense, when a woman selects a mate, a partner, a long term companion, someone that she's willing to marry and spend the rest of her life with, presumably, is she going to be subservient to him? Is that going to be her natural inclination? Is that normal? Or is that, some sort of weird freakish thing that the Bible people are always talking to you about? Is that a realistic expectation in relationships? And what does that even look like? And that's honestly quite a lot of questions, and I don't think I'm going to be able to follow, I'm not going to be able to answer all those questions in one video. I don't think anyone can really address all those questions in a meaningful way in just one video. I will say right away that picking out a mate, picking out a partner, is not the same as being obeisant to all men. Not all men deserve or should in any way be entitled to the obeisance, the obedience, the submission of all women. Please get this through your heads. I feel like I have to say this a lot because there's some people sitting in the back who just aren't listening. Like, seriously, I've talked to too many of them now. But yeah, like, it's one of those things. When a woman selects a mate because of hypergamy, that evil, awful hypergamy that everyone's always complaining about, because of hypergamy, she's going to pick someone that she thinks is outranking her. Someone she thinks is just a little notch above her. This is how women function. This is how women think when they select mates. So if she's in an ideal situation, which not all people are in an ideal situation, but if she's in a good situation, or even better, an ideal situation, she's going to aim just a little bit upward, which means she's going to pick someone who outranks her. And this is something that I talked about in last week's video when I was doing the book review for Rational Male Book, Volume 2. Number 8, I think, was the video. If she's picking someone who outranks her just a little bit because of hypergamy, she's going to be aiming for that. That's ideally what she's going to select for herself in a mate. He's naturally going to outrank her, like by default. He's hypergamously pleasing, he's a step above her. So that's where this tendency that you see in multiple religions also, but we're not... I hate bringing religion into it. It's mentioned a lot in religion. At least it's mentioned a lot in the Bible. And I've seen so many religious people bring it up like, oh, women should be subservient to their husbands. Women should be submissive to their husbands. Well, why? Why should that be? Because your Bible says so? I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm Catholic. There's a crucifix on the wall behind me. I don't know if you can see it. I am Catholic. I try to be a good Catholic. I really do. But I hate it. I hate it when people just bring a religious text into an argument and offer no context and just sort of toss it at you like, well, my religion says pleh, and now you have to believe it because it's a good argument because it's my religion. It's like, yeah, but what if someone from the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster comes up and says, well, my religion says pleh? Does that make that a good argument? I mean, does the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster, do we really, really have to believe that? By the way, I did know a guy who I believe was a priest of the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster. He thought it was hilarious. Just because you have a religion, it might be a very good religion, but you need to have the why. And if you don't supply the why behind it, like, it's perfectly okay to bring a religious text into an argument and say, this is what the religious text says. I think they worded it really well, and I think it illustrates a really great point, and I'm going to elaborate on that point. That's reasonable. But just chucking your religion at people again and again is just... it's intellectually lazy, I think. And so, are there a million and one Bible quotes? Women should be submissive to their husbands. Women should be subservient to their husbands and their fathers and possibly also their brothers and just maybe their uncles. I don't know. Um, is that out there? Yes. Do a lot of religious people quote it? Oh my God, yes. Do a lot of tradcon women quote that sort of thing? Yes. Do they use the Bible as justification for this mentality? Yes. Does it drive me up a wall? Kinda, yes it does. Because there's no why. Why do this? Why is this a thing? Oh, because the Bible says so. That's great. I like your Bible and everything, but why? And I think it is simply just that one issue, hypergamy, which is funny because men hate hypergamy. Like so many men hate hypergamy. Interestingly enough, Chad doesn't hate hypergamy. Tyrone never complains about hypergamy. My husband doesn't complain about hypergamy. A lot of the happily married men that I know, whose wives I'm friends with, and whose kids my kids play with, they're not complaining about hypergamy all that much either. I mean, they know some women and they know some friends of theirs who are in bad relationships, and oh my gosh, if they get together and they all have a nice, a nice dude conversation over some beers, yeah, suddenly women are traitorous and not to be trusted at all. But then, they go back to their relationships and it's like, I'm a lucky man, I'm married to a good woman, life is good. They're not thinking about hypergamy. As much as a lot of men in this world hate hypergamy, that whole feminine subservience and submission thing, it comes very naturally to women who've made that hypergamous selection and gone just a tiny step up, just one little notch. It doesn't have to be a big step up. And people are multifaceted, so it could be that she sees him as a hypergamous option because he's got, slightly higher abilities than her in this thing here and this little trait over there and this little trait over there. It's not necessarily going to be something that's readily apparent. So maybe she's the pretty one in the relationship, but he's got the brains and he's got the ambition and he's got, the creativity, and she just looks at that and goes, oh, yep, this is a step up for me. That happens. It happens. But as long as she sees it as a hypergamous option, she's going to react to it like a hypergamous option, which means she's going to see him and perceive him as being just a step above herself. So then you get into the idea of subservience and submission, and you have to look again, and this is something I talked about last week, you have to look at every single family unit, every nuclear family unit of male, female, and then whatever children they produce, as being a very tiny micro tribe. And humans are very tribal creatures. We grew up being social animals in small tribal gatherings of families, relatives, groups of people who traveled together, lived together, and survived by maintaining a community. And within that community, there were little micro tribes or little sub tribes, and those sub tribes were made up of males and their mates and then the offspring they produced. And in some tribes, in some parts of the world, that would be one male with, 6 females and whatever offspring they produced. And in other parts of the world, that was one male with one female and whatever offspring they could afford to produce, depending on what resources were available, what the climate was like, what kinds of food were available, just everything. So this is the way that people think, or at least the way that a lot of people tend to think. Most people tend to think just very naturally, whether they've been taught that this is the way they should think or not. Meaning that all those women with all their feminist dogma who've been fed the same ideas throughout their public school education, which I was fed those ideas all throughout my public school education, throughout their collegiate education, which I saw way too many of those ideas during my brief stint in college before I gave up and realized that it just was not something I wanted to invest my time and money in. And, during their graduate training, during whatever job they get into, because there's a lot of very woke jobs out there that are very pro-feminist. This is the world around them. This is what society has reinforced in their minds. But it doesn't change the fact that when they select a mate, the mate who is going to be most arousing to them and most exciting to them, whether they want to admit it or not. He's going to be just that little extra step above where they stand. Now, they might not choose that mate. They might follow all of the training that they've had and all of the, for lack of a better word, propaganda that they've been fed throughout their lives. And they might marry a man that they feel they can dominate and be in charge of because they should be leaders, because they should be. Well, why should you be? Well, because that's what they've always been told. That's the answer. They've been taught all their lives that they should be leaders, that being a leader is a valuable thing. And so they take on this role because this is good. That's what they've been told. And so they do it. And I don't think they sit down, I don't think anyone really sits down and thinks about the why of their actions all that much. Why do I want to do this thing? You know, why did I want to have kids? I hate being pregnant. Why do I keep getting pregnant? I hate it. It makes me grumpy. So why do I keep doing it? You know, why? Why really? And I mean, who sits down and picks apart the reasoning behind their own actions for hours, days, months, sometimes even years? Why would anybody sit down and do that? When it all clicks inside their head and makes perfect sense anyway. It's like, well, of course I should do this. Why would you take the time to question your own actions or your own beliefs? People don't do that. So, not all women, especially with all the feminist dogma, and some women are just kind of overbearing by nature. Some women are a little bit shrewish. That's a thing that happened long before feminism came around, and it's probably going to happen long after feminism is dead, so let's not rule that out. Not all women are going to choose a hypergamously pleasing partner, but when they do, whether they want to or not, some piece of them, some subconscious part of their mind is going to perceive him as just that little step higher. And so it's going to be that little extra bit easier to be subservient to him, because in your micro tribe, it's a little teeny social group. You're going to have leaders and you're going to have followers. And you really can only afford to have one leader in a micro tribe with only 2 people. And so who's going to take the lead? And it's definitely going to be the person who's better suited to the job. The person who's that extra bit smarter, that extra bit stronger, that extra bit faster. That's who takes the lead. That's who's very naturally going to fall into that position. And if a woman who has made a hypergamous mate selection, my foot hurts for some reason, excuse me. Ow. If a woman who's made a hypergamous selection already perceives him as being superior to her, superior is not the best word because people are going to get a lot of, there's a lot of flavor attached to a word like that, but I don't really have a better one on hand and I'm tired dancing around it. If she already sees him as slightly superior to her, she's going to be treating him with a certain deference that one would treat a leader with. So he's going to fall into that position even more naturally. Again, if she's a shrewish woman or she doesn't necessarily perceive him as being hypergamously pleasing, that's not going to happen. But if she does perceive him, and the only thing that's important here, it should be mentioned, is her perception. What other people think outside of their relationship does not matter. It's her perception and her perception alone, because that's going to affect how she treats him and how she reacts to him. And that's what forms this kind of social relationship, this social dynamic, where he increasingly takes a leadership role as the relationship forms, and she increasingly takes a subservient and kind of a follower role. And the thing I really wanted to talk about in this video, which is just a tiny slice of the issue, but I think it's an important one, our society has no working concept of what it means to be a good follower. And that's kind of a problem. If you look up what is a leader, what does it mean to be a leader, you know, if you Google search it, you will find so many articles. What is leadership? How to be a good leader? What does it mean to be a leader? Oh my gosh, just article after article after article. So much stuff. Everybody talks about being a leader. And I remember being in God, it was middle school, middle school in particular, they were really, really trying to teach us about leadership. You need to be a leader. You need to lead. You need to show leadership qualities. Just so much leadership bullshit. Now, in middle school, I think I was more potently aware of it than in other years of my public school education, because in middle school, that was one of those times, like that was one of those periods of my life where my life was falling apart more than in other periods of my life. I was bedridden in a semi-conscious state for a full week. When that sort of thing is happening to you in school, it's really, really hard to do well in class. It's really, really hard to be all bright and chipper and put your best foot forward. It's really hard to get your brain cells together enough to exhibit these leadership qualities that everyone's always asking you for. I was withdrawn. I was kind of shrunken into myself. So I was very much aware of this kind of leadership propaganda that was being kind of fed to us, and I remember that it just was not my place at that time in my life. I didn't have any strength left in me because every little ounce of strength that I had was going into just functioning. Breathe in, breathe out. It's hard to do. Believe it or no, it is excruciating and it is difficult. And once you've gone through that, you just don't have extra energy to smile and be charming to people. You don't. It's gone. And so while I wasn't, that wasn't the beginning of my life as a submissive seeming and weak seeming and very milk toast kind of person. Like for many years after that, people just thought that I didn't have any strength or substance to me at all, because that was what they saw. They saw this flimsy, shallow, empty, weak little person. And so I got the leadership propaganda, but I got it from the you need to change everything about yourself and you need to do it right now kind of angle. But there is no discussion at any point, and I don't remember there being any discussion. Maybe there was, but I have no memory of it whatsoever. No discussion whatsoever of how to be a good follower. Like they must have they I'm trying to think if they ever talked about it. And I think it was just all about leadership. And so I did a Google search after what is leadership. I did a Google search on what does it mean to be a follower? What is a follower? And I got like a dictionary definition, and that was it. And I thought about that for a bit. How many times have you been told that it's bad to be a follower? Because I know I've been told that a bunch. And again, maybe that's just my very submissive exterior from when I was younger, which for all I know is somewhat there still, but it's changed a little bit. People who get to know me realize that I'm kind of a little bit aggressive. I'm prickly. Let's just put it that way. I'm prickly, and if you get to know me, you'll notice that I'm prickly. Um, but how many times are you told not to be a follower? How many times are you told not to be submissive? And it's not just men, it's not just women, it's men too, but it's one of those things that's always bad. If they jumped off a cliff, would you do it too? If you're a follower, you're likened to a lemming, which, by the way, biologically, lemmings aren't naturally driven off of cliffs by instinct or anything. That was faked in the original documentary that filmed it. I found that out and I thought it was fascinating. But anyway, this idea that lemmings jump off cliffs for inexplicable reasons, which don't make any kind of sense, people attribute that to being a follower. What does it mean to be a follower? Oh yeah, those stupid little northern rodents that jump off cliffs into the water and drown for no apparent reason. That's what being a follower is, right? That's what being a follower is. People have no concept of being a follower. And so it's not a particularly useful word. I looked up the word subservient, and I don't necessarily like that definition either. Unquestioning obedience, is that really what we want? Is that really the term we want to use? Again, it's nice and biblical. Women should be subservient to their husbands. Well, what exactly does that mean? And why? Again, always the question of why. Well, in an ideal case, in a more generalized ideal case, obviously there are going to be exceptions to this rule, but if a woman has judged a man and found him worthy, She's established that he is a hypergamous option for her. She's established that he would be a good leader. And so she's not going to question him all that much. She's going to follow his leadership because human beings, male, female human beings, are generally inclined to follow the leadership of a leader that they trust. And this goes back to the whole idea of should all women be subservient to all men? Absolutely not. If I don't trust you, it doesn't matter whether or not you got an intact penis. I don't care. I won't trust you. And I've had leaders in my life, as I've described earlier with my stories about public school, these brief ones in this video. I've had leaders do some really horrible stuff to me because they were bad leaders and they didn't care about what happened to me. I'm not going to trust anyone in a position of authority over me unless I have judged them very carefully and established a sense of trust in them. No trust, no submission at all. And that's it. I cannot make myself obey and follow someone I don't trust. And so as a general rule, I just avoid authority figures because it makes me feel safer. It's like if I really trust someone, if I want to follow them, for example, my husband, because he's very much a part of my life, well, then I'll follow him to the ends of the earth and back. And I mean, there have been occasions where he's come up to me and he said, we need to do this now. And I've just gone like, okay, drop everything I'm doing. I remember a few times where he'd come to me and he'd be like, okay, we're doing this. And I'd be like, okay. And I just drop what I was doing and follow him. I mean, that is subservience. That is unquestioning obedience. But I wouldn't do that for just anybody. And anybody who thinks that they could somehow force me into that kind of a position, they don't know what an unpleasant person I can be sometimes. It is not my nature to follow at all, because I've had so many situations in my life where that's been a very dangerous or life-threatening situation. Like if someone tries to take a leadership position and I don't know them and I don't trust them, it means death. And honestly, a lot of people are like that. A lot of creatures are like that. If you don't build trust first, then you won't have leadership. You try riding a horse. Just try it. I'm not a big horse person. I don't like any kind of animal that I can't like chuck over my shoulder and drag out of a burning building if there's an emergency. If I have to somehow communicate to that creature, we need to get out of this burning building and we need to go that way, and the creature's so big that I can't just overpower it and it's panicking, I don't want to take the time to make that communication. I prefer to just grab it and throw it over my shoulder. So the cats I can handle. A lot of dogs I can handle. Small goats I can handle. Cows, horses, larger livestock, no. I'm just not that good at communicating. I don't have the social skills to deal with horses. But yeah, if you can't expect a horse to let you ride it unless you've established some sort of trust and leadership in that, with that horse, why would you expect a woman to like, any social creature, you have to establish a sense of leadership. But once you've built up that leadership, once you've built up that degree of trust, subservience is going to happen sometimes. I'm not going to say all the time. I'm not going to say that I haven't occasionally questioned my husband's decisions, but when I question my husband's decisions, and this goes back to the idea, the very limited idea we have of what it means to be a follower. When I question my husband's decisions, I don't go sneaking around behind his back and just not doing what he asked me to, or arguing with him when he says we need to do this. I ask him, okay, why do we need to do this? Kind of help clarify it in my mind for me so I have a picture of where we're going. Or, wouldn't it be easier to do this? What about this other option? Have you considered this? Is this something that you've already ruled out? If so, why? I'm curious. And so the thing that I keep coming to is this idea that maybe subservient isn't a good word because we have a very negative understanding of that. Like there's There's too many abusive drunks out in this world who will smack their wife across the face and say, "You need to be subservient to me." It's like, no, she doesn't. Why the hell should she be subservient to you? You're a bad leader. Um, Submissive. Yeah, that happens, but I think that if you use the word without the explanation of why that goes behind it, it's not a helpful word. Follower isn't necessarily a good word because we have no real social definition of follower. It seems like such a mindless word and such an empty word. Lemmings follow things. Stupid creatures follow stupidly. And without good reason. And the assumption I think that a lot of people have I think the reason a lot of people dislike this idea of female subservience within a relationship so much is because they think that it's supposed to be some sort of mindless reaction. It's the same mindless, stupid reaction of a dumb animal or a lemming. And there is reason behind it. There is a subconscious pattern of thought that leads to this kind of reaction in women toward men that they have formed hypergamous bonds with. It's not something that's going to happen overnight just because you have a penis and she's a woman. It doesn't work like that. She judges you. She judges you very, very thoroughly and very, very carefully. And once that judgment process has been completed, and this is something that, if you look at different areas of the manosphere, it gets complicated where, Rollo Tomasi will say that she's always got that question in the back of her mind, can't I do better? In cases of what Tomasi referred to, and he was taking a term from another gentleman whose name I can't remember offhand, in those cases of, what's it called? Yep, it's been a minute. I can't remember the name. I made a video about it. I'll post that here, and then, in cases of this particular situation, which is what I can only assume is the kind of relationship that I've formed with my husband, she's already made that judgment, or in my case, I've already made that judgment. The judgment has been made. It is final. It's been fully established. There's no going back and questioning it. I've got other things going on in my life. I've got other programs running right now. Baby Maker 1.0. God, Baby Maker 4.0 at this point. That's what's going on in my mind. I don't need to go back and hypergamously weigh my husband because I've already weighed him and I've moved on to the next step in my life. At this point, if I'm subservient to him, and if a woman who's made these similar judgments is subservient to a man that she's made the judgments about, it's not mindless, it's not stupid, it's not an empty decision. It's a decision that's been pre-made. It's been a very carefully made decision. I chose him as a leader because I felt that he was superior to me in intelligence, in logic, in reasoning ability, in problem solving, in planning, in financial knowledge and expertise, in everything. And so I said, okay, if this guy takes the reins while I'm not paying attention because I might possibly be distracted by the fact that I'm constantly pregnant and have been for almost a decade now, that's okay because I can trust him. If he comes into the room someday and says, hey, we need to do X and we need to do it now, I'm not going to question him. I'm not going to argue with him because I've already established he knows what he's doing and I can trust him. That's not mindless. So what do you call that? And how do you describe a relationship like that? And I think a good term is to describe it as a second in command. We don't value followers without ever realizing, I think, and I mean, people talk about this, but they never take it too seriously. If everyone was a leader, there would be no followers, and everybody would be running around uselessly, shouting orders into the abyss, and thinking that anyone else would follow them because they're all the leader. They all have their own ideas of what they should do. There's no teamwork, there's no coordination, there's no order, it's just chaos. A world full of leaders with absolutely no followers is just chaos. And nothing gets done, nothing gets achieved. There is no growth, there is no success. A follower because we have such negative association with the word, isn't necessarily a good term. But a second in command, that can be a valuable thing. A good second in command is an extremely valuable thing. I mean, yeah, you need a good leader, but you also need a good team to work with that leader in order to make any project that they work on, any goal they seek to achieve. In order for that to be successful, the followers have to be good. The second in command has to be good. They have to be competent. They have to be capable of thinking on their feet. They have to be capable of holding their own shit together. A leader with good followers, with good second in commands, with good subordinates, he can tell them what they need to do, and then he can turn his attention to other issues that he needs to take care of, and he doesn't have to worry about them screwing up all the time. It's important, and it is a deeply undervalued thing in our society to be a good second in command. And so when you have the formation of a micro tribe within the greater context of society, so you have your nuclear family, and the man does naturally gravitate into this leadership role, women are told it's a bad thing to be a follower. But what really we should be teaching women, I think, is that it's important to be a good second in command. It's important to be good at supporting your husband's leadership as he performs that role. And I've seen so many men who look at women and they look at the relationships they form with women and they say, well, women are just, I can't remember who said this to me. It was someone in the comments section, and he told me that a man should be the pilot of his plane and a woman is basically the stewardess. And that was it. She's just the stewardess. She's there to sit in the back and serve the drinks and candy and whatever, and give everybody a little package of peanuts. But she's not actually doing anything very useful when it comes to the flight and the steering of the plane. No, she's the co-pilot. She helps run things. She makes sure everything is running correctly. She's not necessarily steering the plane, but she's there at his side, and she's helping him make sure that things go along smoothly. She's helping him with anything that he needs to make sure the job gets done. That's what a woman's role is. It isn't simply to be there and I don't know if that's really what they meant when they said stewardess, but you get this impression that it's just there to be pretty and kind of fluffy, and in no way necessary to make sure that the plane stays in the air. No, that's she's not necessary for that at all, and that's incorrect. In the formation of a healthy, strong relationship, again, a micro tribe, you have a leader. Leaders are important. You need to have a good subordinate to back up the leader, to be at his side, to help him to achieve his goals, to watch his back for him, to make sure that if he needs something done because he's got too many things he's doing, you're right there to help him do it. For example, say my husband needs an errand run because he's busy working, and it's like, I need somebody to run this errand. It's like, I'm right here. That's what a good follower does. That's what a good partner does. And maybe this is something else that people don't understand. As a partner, a woman is not simply some sort of colorful bit of fluff to decorate a man's house with. She's part of his team. She's a very important part of his team. It's a very small team. There are only 2 of you. So she has to be a valuable contributing member of the team. And again, we don't have a concept of this in our society. We don't have a really good working concept for what a second in command should be, or how a second in command should operate. I suppose I could look it up a bit and pray that I find a good working definition. And I think that the best way to find a good working definition is, instead of writing in the word follower when I'm doing my Google search, to type in second in command, because follower is such a meaningless word to us. It's so empty, and we have no respect for it as a society, which is unfortunate, because people need to understand how to be good followers. As much as your new job as much as the HR department at your new job or whatever tells you that they want you to be a leader and have leadership qualities and act like a leader, and you better show leadership qualities in your job application, you better show leadership qualities in your interview. You know, they don't want a leader. They want a follower. They want someone who's going to do what they're told to do. They want someone who's not going to cause any trouble. They want someone who's not going to someone who's going to fit neatly into their little machine as a nice obedient little cog. They don't want a leader. They just say that because that's the jargon that you're supposed to use. Within the context of a marriage, if everything's going right and both partners are displaying healthy relationship tendencies. So again, in the abusive relationship where the guy is like smacking the woman around and telling her that she needs to be subservient, screw that. He's a bad leader. At that point, he's lost your respect because he hasn't managed to maintain good leadership skills or good leadership behavior. You know, at that point, there is no subservience owed to that man. But within a healthy relationship where both partners are displaying healthy relationship tendencies, again, got to specify that, it's important to be a good follower. It's important to display good traits as a follower, or for lack of a better word, since follower isn't a good one, a good second in command. I'm trying to think of how many examples we have in our society. I mean, you can look at wolves. Wolves are always really cool about that because they have to work as a team to bring down large and dangerous prey. You have your alpha wolf, and everybody's really fond of using this term alpha, but then you have your beta wolf, and a lot of people look at the term beta, and I mean, in the context of the manosphere, don't ever want to be a beta. But, you know, your beta wolf is your second in command. Your beta wolf is right there with the alpha. He's not giving the alpha any kind of crap. When it comes to working as a team, they are all driven toward that goal because they need to eat. That is not a time to be bickering or petty or selfish or self-serving. That's a time to work as a team. Alpha goes wherever he goes, he does whatever he needs to do, and you're working as a team with him in tandem. That's a good second in command because you bring down big prey that way. And I mean, if you can't do that, you don't eat. You don't succeed, you don't flourish. So, a good second in command is a valuable, valuable thing. And it's something no one in our society talks about, which is unfortunate. It's a conversation I think we need to have. Anyway, that's it for this video. I think it's already run a little too long. Next week, I'm going to try to get another chapter of Rational Male done so that you guys can actually, so I can actually finish this book and you guys can actually watch the rest of the review on that. And then the week after, so 2 weeks from now, I will do a video about women who take on leadership responsibilities within a marriage. Now, that's not the entirety of the video. It's going to be about a lot of different things, but that is going to be something I'm going to touch on rather heavily because I was reading this lovely little article and women were complaining specifically about taking on leadership roles within a relationship, a marriage, and how they were dissatisfied with men's performance. And if you read carefully enough and you kind of read between the lines, it becomes very apparent that these women taking these leadership roles are displaying very poor leadership habits, and then doing another thing, which is something leaders shouldn't do, blaming their subordinates for not being good subordinates. In this case, men. It's all men's faults. So I definitely want you guys to kind of stick around for that, because that's going to be kind of a continuation of this subject a little bit. So, that's it. If any of you are interested, our first video on Subscribestar is up, and that's about Stoicism. And if you want to go over to Subscribestar and watch it, it's $1 to get in. Like, you don't have to pay more than $1. So yeah, definitely check it out and see if you like it. I'll talk to you guys later.